Happy Tuesday. Hope you're having a nice day so far. Counting down the days. Counting down the days. Well, thank you for watching. Thank you for the new subscribers. Don't forget at the end of the day, like I always say, guys, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. This one, my mouth is open. Ah, wow, my sister. Oh, how could she be a slave in this time? Now, we know about the slave trade. We know about the slavery in the UK. We know that they, until now, the UK haven't paid any repatriation. We know all the black folks that went over England and built England and worked so hard and all of those drama that happened in the UK. Well, people, this one, like I said, perhaps I should say lost for words. This is in a pickle. Like, this is just insane. Like, lost for words. Flabbergasted. Like, I'm just lost for words, guys. Like, I don't even know what to say. But this story is incredible, disturbing. So let's get into the story quick and fast. So like I say, guys, happy Tuesday. Hope you're having a nice day and all of that. So we're going to be talking about the story here. UN judge of forcing a woman to work as a slave at her UK home in Oxfordshire. So let's get into the story quick and fast. Yes? UN judge studying at Oxford kept young woman as a slave. A United Nations judge studying at the University of Oxford exploited and abused a young Uganda woman she kept as a slave in Britain. Prosecutors said Lydia Mugambi, 49, took advantage of her status over her victim by preventing her from holding down a steady employment and forcing her to work as her maid. Oxford Crown Court had heard that Mugabe, who is also a High Court judge in Uganda, worked with John Leonard Murgawa, the Uganda Deputy High Commissioner, to arrange for the young woman to come to UK. So she bought a slave. Mugambi was found guilty on Thursday of conspiring to facilitate the commission of a breach of UK immigration law. Travel with the view to exploitation, forcing someone to work, and conspiracy to intimidate a witness. Caroline Yu, KC prosecuting, told jurors on her arrival she was made to work to Miss Mugabe for the very start, and acting as a maid and for childcare to give Mrs. Mugambi back her life. Deprived of her freedom, choose her own work to control her ID documents, she was beholden to Miss Mugabe. Lonely and stuck, jurors accepted the prosecution case that Mugabe, who was studying for a law PhD, had engaged in illegal folly with Mr. Mungerwa. Prosecutors said that their peer took part in a very dishonest trade-off in which Mr. Mugerwa arranged for the Uganda High Commission to sponsor the woman entrance into the UK in exchange for Mugabe attempting to speak to the judge who was in charge of legal action. Mr. Mugawa was named in Mugabe's trial, heard she had the intention of obtaining someone to make her life easier and at the least possible cost to her. So she wants people to come and do the dirty work, but at least possible cost to her. So pay her little to none. Mugambi denied forcing the young Uganda woman to be household chores, to do household chores and said she always treated her with love, care, and patience. The young woman Mugabe tricked into coming to the UK, who cannot be named for legal reasons, told the court previously she felt lonely and stuck after her working hours were limited. According to her UN profile page, Mrs. Mugambi was appointed to the body's judicial roster in May 2023, 3 months after police were called to her address in Oxfordshire. So imagine that you're a judge in Uganda and you get caught up right now in the UK for enslaving a girl that you made someone help you basically smuggle smuggle the lady in Great Britain to turn her into a slave. Now we know that a lot of people from Uganda and Africa end up in Dubai and enslaved. There was a lady where her master or her boss pushed her off the balcony. We heard all the slave story what happened to black people when it comes to evil in Dubai and in those Muslim country. It's on the news 1 and 2 times, but people don't highlight this one. So it's fascinating to know now that a black woman who should know about slavery, whose four parents supposed to maybe end up in a slave somewhere, supposed to make life better for a black sister, help a black sister on her way, help a black sister in her endeavors, she end up enslaving the black sister. Okay, guys? So if you and not only that, we also know that when the police came, she was telling the police, I am a judge. I am a judge. I am a judge. And I say that to say this. Maybe she thought when she waved the judge baton around or the judge wave around, they're going to let her go and say, oh, the black girl is telling lies. The black girl is a storyteller. The black girl is not being enslaved. But we know in slavery days, it used to be black people was catching slaves and returning it to the master as well. They were part of the slave trade as well. And we know back in the days, allegedly, they claim there was lots of African who end up enslaving and sold out their own people. But nevertheless, people, we now don't want to go too much in it. I want you guys to hear this for yourself. So let's get into this. Judge convicted of being a slave owner in today world. Let's get into this story.
A UN judge has been convicted after forcing a woman to work as a slave. Lydia Mugambi, also a High Court judge in Uganda, was found guilty of conspiring to facilitate a breach of UK immigration law, forcing someone to work, and conspiracy to intimidate a witness. The woman was genuinely shocked she had committed a crime. Take a look at her arrest.
So unfortunately, I'm going to have to now arrest you on suspicion of keeping somebody in slavery and servitude under the Modern Slavery Act. So you don't have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned, something which later on in court.
Officer.
Anything you do say may be as evidence. All right. Sorry?
I am a judge in my country.
Oh,
I
no.
even have immunity. I am not a criminal.
You've got immunity in this country?
Yes. I have a diplomatic passport.
You're a diplomat?
Yes.
So we'll need to see that then.
Yes.
And then we'll need to speak to the embassy if you are a diplomat.
I came here as a student. I don't need her to work for me. I didn't come with her. She asked me because she has worked at my home before. She asked me.
Gasps were heard from the public gallery as the verdicts were given, according to the BBC. The court was then cleared as Mugambi apparently felt unwell. The prosecutor in the case alleged Mugambi, here studying for a law PhD at Oxford, had conspired with the Ugandan Deputy High Commissioner John Leonard Mugerwa to bring the woman to the UK.
So she conspired to bring the woman to UK with this commissioner man. Therefore, this man is going to lose his job as well. Therefore, this man should lose his job as well. Buying slave. I wonder how many more people that they bought. Brought them to the UK, abused them and used them, allegedly. Oh no. Let's continue.
Mugambi was appointed as a judge 3 months after police were called to her address in Oxfordshire. Thames Valley Police Commander for Oxfordshire said, Lydia Mugambi is an extremely qualified lawyer, a Ugandan High Court judge and a UN Criminal Tribunal judge. After the offences had been reported to the police, Mugambi tried to evade justice by repeatedly claiming she had diplomatic immunity due to her status. Any immunity Mugambi may have enjoyed as a UN judge has been waived by the Office of the United Nations Secretary-General. Uganda is a highly corrupt country, currently in turmoil as its chief member of the opposition is placed behind bars. Theresa May made tackling modern slavery a central piece of her premiership. She warned changes to migration legislation could put slaves at risk.
This bill has been marketed as a stop the boats bill. We all want to stop the boats. Nobody wants to see people risking their lives in small boats across the Channel, as we don't want to see them risking their lives in unseaworthy vessels across the Mediterranean. But this bill is not just written to stop the boats. It covers all illegal migration and its unwritten subtext is the Stop Certain Victims Claims of Modern Slavery bill. Not stop forced claims of modern slavery, but stop all claims full stop. And the evidence of the police is clear. If you want victims to provide evidence to bring slave drivers to justice, the victims need time, they need support, and they need to be here.
It was reported at the time that modern slaves were present in every town across Britain. Up to 50 million were present around the world. Rafe Hadel Manku says global elites often obsessed with the legacy.
Did you guys hear that? Over 50-something slaves.
And once you look at it through that lens, then
Only 50-something slaves, people, are still running around in Britain. I want you guys to hear that, and I'm going to repeat it. I kind of backtrack a bit, and I'm going to make you guys repeat that so you guys could hear.
Stop certain victims' claims of modern slavery bill. Not stop forced claims of modern slavery, but stop all claims full stop. And the evidence of the police is clear. If you want victims to provide evidence to bring slave drivers to justice, the victims need time, they need support, and they need to be here.
It was reported at the time that modern slaves were present in every town across Britain.
See?
Up to 50 million were present around the world.
You hear?
Rafe Hadel Manku says global elites, often obsessed with the legacy of slavery and demanding reparations, should focus their efforts on the plight of currently held slaves.
none of this is actually about slavery and reparations. This is an avaricious cash grab by the Caribbean states, and the judge in question here is a long-standing reparations activist for the Caribbean states. And also from the left, of course, this is an attempt to undermine Britain and the West and use the politics of victimhood and post-colonial imperial guilt to do that. And once you look at it through that lens, then you begin to undermine Britain and the West and use the politics of victimhood and post-colonial imperial guilt to do that. And once you look at it through that lens, then you...
So they're basically using this judge as a way to talk about slavery, right? It's a way to talk about slavery when we know the UK still haven't paid for repatriation. We knew the UK is built on slavery and all of that. So I believe they're just using this to highlight it and pretend that to take off the eyesight off of them, or the whisper off of them to say, wait a minute, UK, you're built on slavery, to be honest. But anyways, neither here nor there. Let's continue.
To understand the geopolitics here and what's going on. It's no surprise either that another judge on the ICJ was a former member of the communist government who now sits on there, who also voted on Chagos. Russia also trying to influence the ICJ on Chagos to essentially add costs to Britain as a penalty for its position in the Ukraine war. And you know this is not about slavery, because if this was about slavery, you would have them equally vocal about the plight of modern slaves today, where 7 in every 1,000 Africans is a slave, 10 million people. The CNN reported that hundreds of slaves are sold every week in Libya.
Yep.
There are 800,000 slaves in Cameroon. So where are these?
You hear how many slaves are around the world still? So it's not only the judge have slaves around here. There's lots of slave going on, modern day slavery is still going on right now as you speak. Let's continue.
protesting outside the high commissions of Nigeria, outside the Sudanese embassy. The fact that they are more concerned about the plights of people 200 years ago rather than those people we can save today speaks volumes about all of this. And of course, this thing about 18 trillion came out at a speech that this judge gave standing next to Sadiq Khan, a man who constantly lectures Britain about its role in the slave trade, wants a museum for slavery, yet he's always telling us that he's the son of a Pakistani bus driver. He went on an official visit to Pakistan, the global center of slavery, and not one did he raise the topic. That, I think, speaks volumes.
We've also read today this remarkable story. I mean, I've just shared it on X, that we're taking down portraits of people like Nelson, probably the greatest naval commander that ever lived, and we're putting up portraits of Yvette Cooper. Now, I can't think of a single thing Yvette Cooper has ever achieved apart from losing control of our borders. And that, to me, seems to also play into what you're saying, in that people like Nelson apparently had some sort of loose connection with slavery, and yet here's the morally righteous, I would argue, narcissistic Labour MPs like Yvette Cooper being put up, and simply because I think she's a woman, that seems to be the only qualification. I mean, what is going on here?
Well, this is again part of the broader war in our history. It's no coincidence that the people who've been brought down in terms of pictures and so forth are our greatest heroes, you know, the giants of history, who we're now told are villains. There is no evidence whatsoever that Nelson supported slavery. The leading biographer of Nelson said the one letter that's held up as evidence was actually doctored after his death. But yet we've seen his portrait go down. We've mysteriously had William Wilberforce, the abolitionist of slavery, have his picture taken down. And 4 pictures of Elizabeth I have come down, whilst 4 of Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker, have gone up. Someone please explain the logic behind that to me.
Many small boat arrivals to Britain are those who have been promised work. Some are taken for slave labour once they arrive. Others work freely, though illegally. The government has been stepping up immigration raids to clamp down on exploitation.
Under the cover of darkness, immigration officers and...
So that's why you see the UK is trying to hold on to their border and all of that, because they believe that they can stop the slavery and stuff that are happening. But that's been happening for the longest time. So we want to go back. We want to skip out this story. As you guys know, the UN judge in Great Britain studying arranged for the commissioner to bring a black girl from Uganda to enslave her in the UK, take away her documents, control her time, control her destiny, control her life, and got busted. And when she got busted, she's using her privilege. I'm a UN judge. I am a this. I am a that. I would never, never, never. But yes, so she said that the girl was working with her in Uganda as well. So I wonder how many people in Uganda she enslaved and used her power on as a judge and got away with it, allegedly. Anyways, because all of that, people, and because the UK bust the story, highlight the story, lock up the black woman because of slavery, we can't forget not to leave UK out of the blood and sugar slavery that happened in the UK. Still happening, no repatriation and all of that. So if we're going to talk about slavery for the black lady, we're going to talk about slavery for our slave master and our persons, masters that they claim that own everything and dominate the whole world. So let's get into this one quick and fast, yeah?
During the long 18th century, the West Indies, the Caribbean islands, were not the tourist hotspots that they are today. They were, as Lord Nelson himself supposedly described, an infernal hellhole. And in a previous video, I discussed the brutal nature of those islands for the army and how deployment to the West Indies was once almost a certain death sentence. But of course, there were other inhabitants of those islands as well who suffered far more deeply and more tragically than soldiers. Those who had even less a choice to be there, and those who held no hope of escaping from those fever islands.
Remember
I'm
back then,
speaking, of course,
slavery?
about the slave population, among whom the rates of mortality were so brutally high and birth rates so low that the only way that the planter class could keep their numbers up, their slave numbers up, was by a constant importation of a fresh workforce. So in this video, brought to you by the Native Oak and our mission to promote the study of history for the national good, we're going to talk about why that was the case. What made slave mortality so immense in the West Indies? And how could the constant buying of new slaves to replace the old ones, rather than just trying to maintain the original population, possibly be profitable? Now, as you may expect, FID theft attempts. Not only that, but you can throw in one of these tracker cards and you will never lose the thing again. But all the Europeans bought them. Those who were obliged to make plantations began to employ Negro slaves for that work, and soon all of the islands were cultivated by Africans, badly fed, half-naked, beat, and used more unmercifully than the most stubborn beasts of our country. Every year, about 52,000 slaves are carried from Africa to the West Indies. The Danes carry away about 3,000, the Dutch 6,000, the French 13,000, and the English have all the rest, which they distribute in their colonies. They sell about 3,000 to the French and nearly 4,000 to the Spaniards, the only people having any possessions in the West Indies who do not go to the markets for slaves on the African coast. Despite an incredibly high mortality rate, which we'll discuss soon enough, by the 1650s, using the island of St. Kitts as an example, roughly 20% of the total island population was black. By the census of 1678, it was a little over half of the population, and by the early 18th century, nearly 80% of the population consisted of black Africans, again, primarily enslaved Africans. Slave labor is very rarely easy, and the majority of the work to be done on a sugar plantation was especially difficult. Sugarcane is a nutrient-intensive crop, meaning that the ground in which it was planted needed to be very heavily fertilized, and there was a lot of work prior to the actual planting to be done. And in the planting season, the majority of slaves found themselves occupied with hoeing, weeding, planting, and fertilizing. Once all that was done, there would be a small reprieve in that sugarcane doesn't really require much care until it's ready to be harvested, at which point there would be a series of even more trying tasks. Once ready to be harvested, the cane would be cut at its base with a long knife or a machete. This is, as you might imagine, pretty back-breaking labor. The top of the cane would then be removed as cane trash, agriculturally useless, and which would need to be hauled away. It was often used by slave populations to thatch the roofs of their housing, or otherwise just burned. The fresh cane would need to be processed almost immediately afterwards, lest it spoil, with slaves either hauling it by hand or by cart to the sugar mill. There it would be fed through large rollers to crush the cane and extract its juice. Even in a pre-industrial era, this was a fairly dangerous process. One account described how, if a mill feeder be catched by the finger, his whole body is drawn in and is squeezed to pieces. The liquid having been squeezed...
So you guys know how sugar is made, and you know the white sugar that you have now, it's bleached. So that's why it's not good to even drink white sugar, because natural sugar is supposed to be brown, squeezed out of the cane, put to in the sun to dry, to crystallize and make that so-called sugar that we have out here. So the next time you go pick up a bag of sugar, whether it's brown or white, know yourself, know about slavery, know how sugar came on the land, know about all of this story when it comes to slavery. Most of the things that we're eating out here, most of the things that we're taking for fun, most of the things that we're licking off our finger, like even oxtail. Oxtail is it's an expensive meat now, but back in the days nobody wanted. The slave master didn't want it, throw it off. That's what the slave them used to eat, and now it turned into a big expensive meal. Everybody want oxtail and butter bean, when we know oxtail came from slavery, and how the slaves them had to beg and plea to get those kind of tail to eat and make it something good for their family and for their loved ones, so to speak. So this has been this story been drawn out. This story is a serious story, and if you know your history, when you see that they locked up the UN judge for slavery, you're looking at Great Britain like, what about you? What about you? What about the sugar plantation slavery? Here we are. We're talking about it now. Okay?
Out, it was then brought to the boiling house, where lime and ash were added to it, and it was boiled along successive basins, becoming thicker and thicker with every pour. At the end of the line, it would be poured into a barrel and brought to the curing house, where the still hot liquid would be put through inverted conical containers with holes at their bottom. Cooling sugar crystals would stick to the sides of the container, while liquid molasses would drip steadily out of the bottom. The result would then be molasses, which might be used in the production of rum, and a solid cone of sugar, which was typically forwarded to plants in Europe for further processing. All of this was a highly technical, precise, and dangerous series of tasks, as they dealt primarily with large quantities of boiling or near boiling.
There we go. So we really don't even need to get into there. We don't want to get in there at all, at all, at all. We don't even want to drag out the story at all, at all, at all. All we know, folks, the UN judge decided to go over the Great Britain to study and haul her slave right behind. Okay, so at the end of the day, we're not sure what her sentences is going to be. But at the end of the day, she was convicted and stuff like that. And we're like, Mama Mia, Mama, because imagine. So let's go back to the story one more time. And we're just gonna kiss her teeth and pass, because at the end of the day,
in my country, I even have immunity. I am not a criminal.
A United Nations judge was convicted of forcing a woman to work as a slave by a British jury. Prosecutors say Lydia Mugambe, a high court judge in Uganda, made another Ugandan woman work as a maid and a child caretaker without pay. She was also accused of preventing the victim from maintaining any other steady employment. Prosecutors accused Mugambe of tricking the victim into traveling to the UK and proceeding to exploit and abuse her, taking advantage of the victim's misunderstanding of her rights.
I came here as a student. I don't need to work for me. I didn't come with her. She asked me because she has worked at my home before. She asked me.
While studying for her PhD at the University of Oxford, Mugabe worked with Ugandan Deputy High Commissioner John Leonard Mugera to have the victim brought into the country.
There's the man that helped to bring the victim in the country. So I wonder how many more he's exploiting, and I wonder how many more he's bringing in the country to work like for free as a slave. Could you imagine? You're in this high power and they see you out here in slavery. Oh no. Let's continue, guys.
Breach of UK immigration law. Mugambe was also convicted of attempting to intimidate the victim into dropping the charges against her. She tried to evade conviction by pointing to diplomatic immunity due to her status as a judge.
You're a diplomat?
Yes.
So we'll need to see that then.
Yes.
And then we'll need to speak to the embassy if you are a diplomat.
Her diplomatic immunity was waived by the Office of the United Nations Secretary General.
Could you imagine all of that, folks? So I just had to come and share that story with you guys. Rightfully, gratefully, right? I'm also going to do a content about Footer Hype and including this in here, but I think this content alone should stay where it is at times and leave other dancehall business alone some other time. But guys, like I said, don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share, okay? And don't forget, at the end of the day, guys, hopefully your week, your day, stay positive, stay blessed. It's going to be a great week and a positive week and a prosperous week. Okay, guys? And not only that, guys, like I said, to the people in my life who make me smile, love me, support me, and bring me to joy, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, guys? So I had to come and share that to say that this UK UN judge, shame on you, shame on you, shame on you, rightfully. And I'm troubled to know that this woman will find herself in this kind of drama after she's in the UK studying and don't know that these people will lock you up in the UK as fast as you say go. Okay, guys? So happy Tuesday. Make sure you're having a nice day. Not only that, have a great day. And not only, guys, that, peace and love. And don't forget, guys, like I said, to subscribe, comment, and share until I see you another time. Okay, stay positive, stay blessed, and like I said, peace and love.